Hello and welcome to the DebtCircle Sundown Brief. I'm Leela and here's your complete debt market roundup for the day. Let's begin with the highest yield listed corporate bond transactions. The highest yield among listed corporate bonds was from Unifin's Capital India Limited, traded at a yield of 17.25% with a trade value of 50 lakh rupees. Another Unifin's Capital India Limited bond traded at a yield of 17.00% with a trade value of 1 lakh rupees. Best Capital Services Limited recorded a yield of 16.00% with a trade value of 50 lakh rupees. IFL Finance Limited traded at a yield of 15.99% with a trade value of 3.75 lakh rupees. Akara Capital Advisors Private Limited recorded a yield of 15.90% with a trade value of 25 lakh rupees. Moving to unlisted corporate bond transactions, Branch International Financial Services Private Limited topped the list with a yield of 16.25% and a trade value of 45 lakh rupees. Another Branch International Financial Services Private Limited bond also traded at a yield of 16.25% with a trade value of 40 lakh rupees. MIBOR Financial Services Private Limited recorded a yield of 14.75% with a trade value of 25 lakh rupees. GMR Sports Venture Private Limited traded at a yield of 14.58% with a trade value of 2000 lakh rupees. Bhumika Shopping Centre India Private Limited recorded a yield of 14.00% with a trade value of 375 lakh rupees. Now let's look at mutual fund debt market activity. Gross purchases stood at 27,675.92 crore rupees. Gross sales were 30,038.23 crore rupees. Net investment for the day was negative 2,362.31 crore rupees. Month to date net investment for June stands at negative 22,994.580 crore rupees. Turning to foreign portfolio investor activity in the debt market. Under the general limit category, gross purchases were 2,406.94 crore rupees. Under the voluntary retention route or VRR, gross purchases were 48.43 crore rupees. Under the fully accessible route or FAR, gross purchases were 3,072.34 crore rupees. Gross sales under the general limit were 428.92 crore rupees. Gross sales under VRR were 105.51 crore rupees. Gross sales under FAR were 380.25 crore rupees. Net investment under the general limit was 1,978.02 crore rupees. Net investment under VRR was negative 57.08 crore rupees. Net investment under FAR was 2,692.09 crore rupees. For June month to date, net investment under the general limit stands at 1,606.04 crore rupees. VRR month to date net investment stands at 3,023.89 crore rupees. FAR month to date net investment stands at 5,309.58 crore rupees. Looking at calendar year 2026 year-to-date figures, net investment under the general limit stands at negative 1,789 crore rupees. VRR stands at 72 crore rupees. FAR stands at 19,923 crore rupees. Now to money market rates. The call rate closed at 5.30%. Tri-party repo stood at 5.20%. Basket repo was 5.22%. Special repo was 5.02%. Let's review India government bond yields. The 1-year government bond yield stood at 6.00%. The 3-year yield was 6.36%. The 5-year yield was 6.61%. The 7-year yield was 6.88%. The 9-year yield stood at 6.87%. The benchmark 10-year yield was 6.95%. The 15-year yield stood at 7.29%. The 30-year yield closed at 7.58%. Moving to Treasury bill yields and auction cutoffs. The 91-day Treasury bill yield stood at 5.56%. The 182-day Treasury bill yield was 5.73%. The 364-day Treasury bill yield stood at 6.03%. Let's now examine liquidity conditions. Net liquidity injected was negative 1,47,916 crore rupees. The standing deposit facility or SDF stood at 1,48,075 crore rupees. Marginal standing facility or MSF usage stood at 159 crore rupees. Now for MIBOR OIS rates. The 1-year rate stood at 6.06%. The 2-year rate was 6.27%. The 3-year rate was 6.38%. The 5-year rate stood at 6.56%. Modified MIFOR rates were as follows. The 2-year rate stood at 6.76%. The 3-year rate also stood at 6.76%. The 4-year rate was 6.93%. The 5-year rate was 7.00%. Turning to currency markets, the US dollar to Indian rupee exchange rate closed at 95.51 compared with 95.36 previously. The euro to Indian rupee exchange rate closed at 110.26 compared with 109.89 previously. The British pound to Indian rupee exchange rate stood at 127.70 compared with 127.22 previously. The Japanese yen to Indian rupee exchange rate stood at 0.60, unchanged from 0.60 previously. The Chinese yuan to Indian rupee exchange rate closed at 14.04 compared with 14.05 previously. Now to commodities and 5 previously. Now to commodities and market indices. 24-carat gold with 99.9% purity was priced at 15,169 rupees per 10 grams, compared with 15,273 rupees previously. Silver was priced at 2,600 rupees per 10 grams, compared with 2,650 rupees previously. Crude oil traded at $94.48 per barrel, compared with $92.94 previously. The Sensex closed at 73,524.26 compared with 74,243.34 previously. The Nifty closed at 23,123.00 compared with 23,366.70 previously. Finally, let's look at today's primary corporate bond issuances. Small Industries Development Bank of India announced an issuance of 3,000 crore rupees with a tenure of 37 months. The issue carries AAA ratings from CARE Ratings Limited and CRISIL Ratings Limited. Credila Financial Services Limited announced an issuance of 425 crore rupees with a tenure of 61 months and a coupon of 9.51%. The issue is rated AA by CARE Ratings Limited and AA+ by CRISIL Ratings Limited. Kirtana Finserv Limited announced an issuance of 50 crore rupees with a tenure of 28 months and a coupon of 12.00%. The issue is rated BBB+ by India Rating and Research Private Limited. That concludes the DebtCircle Sundown brief for June 8, 2026. Thank you for joining us. I'm Leela. Stay informed, stay invested, and we'll see you again with the next market update.